I've got a question for you today. I want you to put up your hand if, at any time in your life when you were younger, you have run a lemonade stand. Put your hand up nice and high. So that looks like more than half of the audience if you look around you. Now, maybe it wasn't a lemonade stand. Maybe you were selling something else in a stand out front of your home or in your local town or city. Maybe it was painted rocks or marbles or maybe even bracelets like what I've got on here today. Now, up on the screen, what you'll see is a photo of me when I was young in 2004, I believe it was, with a lemonade stand that got put in the newspaper. And I was really excited about this. It seemed like a big accomplishment when I was young. And on the other side, you can see a photo of me trying to push a lawnmower. I'm clearly too young to do that, A, safely, and B, not strong enough to get it across the lawn. I want you to think back to when you had a lemonade stand when you were younger, or something similar. And I want you to ask yourself, why did you do this? What were you trying to get out of it? Did you do it for fun? Did you do it with a friend and you had a good time? Did you do it for a sense of achievement or satisfaction? Or did you do it for the money? There's nothing wrong with that. I want you to ask, what was your why? What would you have used the money for? For me, this is what I used the money for. This is a 5-cent candy wall at a convenience store. You're seeing less and less of these, I think, these days, but I would have these lemonade stands so that I could make between $7 and $12, go to the corner store, buy enough 5-cent candy to last me until the next time that I sold lemonade or something else on the side of the road. Now, back when any of you had a lemonade stand, I'm sure this likely happened to you as well. I'd be sitting there selling lemonade for 25 cents or 50 cents, or if you really wanted to charge them hefty, $1, and somebody would come along and they would give you $3 or $4, maybe even a $5 bill. And this is what I called back then hitting the jackpot, because it meant I could buy 2 or 3 times as much candy when we went to the corner store. Now, I'm 25 years old now, it's years later. I don't call this hitting the jackpot anymore. I haven't had a lemonade stand in a while, but I do call it the student effect. Now, the student effect is the idea that people are most willing to help others when those others are at a young age. So today I want to tell you 3 stories about myself and others where we have often unknowingly used the student effect in order to achieve goals, passions, whatever we're trying to achieve. So that takes me back to 2012 when I was in university. It was after my first year of university, heading into the summer, and I ran a student painting business. Now, how this worked was we would hire other college and university students to work alongside us and paint houses from the start of May until the end of August. Now, we had to get these houses from somewhere. We had to convince people that they wanted to have their house painted. So we would hire a team of high school students to go and knock on doors in our hometown and ask whether they were interested in getting a free quote to see how much it would cost to paint their home. It looked a little bit like this. They'd knock on the door and they'd ask whether or not they were interested in a free quote. Now, how these high school students made money doing this was we paid them either minimum wage or $15 for every quote that they booked, whichever was greater. Now, at the time, minimum wage, if I remember correctly, was maybe $10, around that, $10 or $11. So $15 was pretty good, especially because the average student would get 1 booked per hour. So they'd make $15. It was a good deal. Now, I'll never forget, there was one boy who, back when I was doing my second year of running the painting business, I was back on a Friday late afternoon and I was doing an estimate that had been booked by somebody the week before. I think it had actually been booked by the boy I'm about to tell you about. He was 13 or 14 years old, and the way that I met him was I was estimating a house, doing a quote on a house next door. And I just talked to the homeowner and I was walking around the outside adding up what it would cost to paint their home. And all I heard was a knock on the door on the house next to me. And what followed the knock was like the most enthusiastic 13-year-old voice saying, "Hey, my name's Sheldon. I'm here because I'm with the student painting company, and we're going to be painting a number of houses there, and there this coming summer right here in your neighborhood. And I was wondering if you wanted a free quote. Now, the first thing I thought of when I heard this next door was, who's he working for? Because I hope he's on my team. This question was because at the time I had hired a marketing manager, so some of the people that would go door to door I didn't get to meet until a month or two after they started working. The next thing I thought of was, sounds a little cheesy maybe. Maybe some of you put yourself in that position and you think that might be a little uncomfortable to sound that enthusiastic about painting, of course. It's not the most exciting thing. But it was that enthusiasm and excitement that related so well to the homeowners who would open the door and see this young guy standing in front of them trying to book an estimate for painting. So instead of 1 quote per hour that he would book, he booked every hour 3 to 4 quotes. What that meant was he was working on his schedule, the evenings after school that worked for him. If the weather was bad, he didn't have to go out unless he wanted to. In 3 to 4 quotes, I was paying him $45 to $60 per hour. Keep in mind, he was 13 and then 14 years old at the time. Now, I don't know what it's like to make $60 an hour at the age of 14, because I didn't make that at a part-time job. But I imagine it looks and feels a little something like this. That's what I think anyways. Now, this is an example of the student effect. His excitement and passion at the door with those homeowners is what led him to do 3 to 4 times better at the job he was doing than the others. Next, I want to tell you about another guy. This guy here, his name is Ayan Esmail. He reached out to me on LinkedIn a year and a half ago and said, I have to meet with you in person. I've been working on, for the last 5 years, a healthcare software business. And he said to me, I am 14 years old and I am doing a bunch of advanced research in the healthcare space. At my company, me and my co-founder are working on advanced human biomarkers that can allow us to proactively diagnose and find treatments for diseases and other types of cancer before they actually happen. Now, he's 14, so I was like, this is crazy. I've got to meet with this kid. So I met with him, and I said, look, we've got 15 to 30 minutes, and I'd love to chat with you. We ended up talking for 2.5 hours because I was blown away by the experiments and things that he was doing. He told me about how he'd been taking different genotypes and genosequences and matching them to different medications in order to eliminate the typical guess and check method of increasing or decreasing the strength of a medication in order to see what works best for each patient. I was blown away. So I reached out to all of the people that I knew that might be able to help him in the healthcare industry, and I told them about him and said, you have to meet this kid. Now, what he said to me is, any one of these meetings you get, I promise you, I will keep you up to date with what happens in them. I really appreciate what you're doing for me. So I called these people, and every single one of them, many of which were very influential, wanted to meet with him in person because they were so excited about what he was working on. This here is a slide that shows a number of images that represent articles he's wrote, experiments he's done, or speaking events that he's done. Again, he's 14 years old and he's speaking all over the country. And everybody wants to support him because they're so surprised about what he's doing at a young age. Again, this is the student effect. Lastly, I want to tell you about a young girl. A girl who over 20 years ago was in a classroom in her school and saw a TV commercial that came on while an educational program was running. It was a commercial for dish soap, Ivory dish soap to be exact. And there was a line in that commercial, and the line said, women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans. She was 11 years old at the time, and she knew there was something wrong with this. She knew that this was a gender inequality issue. So she went home, and she talked to her dad. And her dad recommended and encouraged her to write letters. So she put pen to paper and wrote a letter to the most influential people that she could think of. And at the time, one was the First Lady of the United States, who was Hillary Clinton at the time. She wrote a letter to her. She wrote a letter to a bunch of others that were very influential as well. She even wrote a letter to her local news correspondent. Now, a little bit of time passed, and to her surprise, she got letters back from the First Lady of the United States, Hillary Clinton. She got letters back from a whole bunch of these other people that she'd reached out to with letters of encouragement telling her to keep pursuing what she was doing. And she even wrote a letter to Procter & Gamble, the company that had this Ivory dish soap commercial that she was upset about, frustrated about. Now, her local news correspondent then came to her house and said, "We want to do a story on you. We want to share what you're doing at such a young age." And they did. And not a month passed by before the national television campaign in the commercial was changed from saying women are fighting all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans to people all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans. This 11-year-old had such a substantial impact that started with just a little idea. And what I'm excited to tell you today is many of you, maybe even most of you, will actually know who this 11-year-old is today. This is her here. Her name's Markel. You may know her as the amazing actor in the show Suits, the amazing award-winning USA Network show. You might know her for all of the gender inequality work that she's done and everything that she's accomplished. You might also know her as a new member of the royal family. This is yet another example of how much influence you can have at such a young age and how she took advantage of the student effect. Now, lastly today, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. The first is, reach out to others for mentorship opportunities when you're young. I can promise you when you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old and you reach out to them, you may get help, but it's not near as effective as when you surprise them by sharing your goals with them at a young age. Also, I want you to know that your opinion holds weight and it has value. You may think that you're too young to really make a difference, but there's so many examples, more and more than there have ever been before, of people achieving huge feats at a young age. And lastly, don't underestimate what you're capable of achieving. The last 7 years, I've had a student painting business, and then I went on to found a healthcare software startup, and I've used the student effect over and over again to reach goals and continue to progress down the path that I'm on. If you've got a goal, pursue it. But most importantly, reach out to those that can help you achieve it 10 times faster than if you're just pursuing it on your own and too worried to reach out for help. Thank you.